Hey guys, William here, aka Big Bastard, and this time I want to talk about something that's been kind of overdue for a while on my video channel, and that's my weight loss, the current state of my weight loss, what techniques I'm using currently to lose weight. And weight loss is one of those things that, you know, people have a lot of misconceptions about. From the calories in, calories out bullshit, and I'll get into that a little later, to, well, losing weight is really easy. Without understanding that losing weight is not just a biological process served by biological mechanisms, there's also a lot of psychological shit that goes on and mental shit that goes on. And in many ways, weight loss is a mental disorder. And I'm going to go into some of this, but I'm not going to go into all of it at length. I'm hoping that if you're inspired by this topic, that you will research, look stuff up, etc. Now, as many of you know, I've followed Boogie2988 for quite a while, and he just recently had gastric bypass surgery. The type, and here's one of those misconceptions people don't understand. Gastric bypass actually encompasses three types of operations. One is the type that everyone thinks about when they hear about gastric bypass, and that's the uh, duodenum switch, I think it's called. And this basically rearranges portions of your stomach to make your stomach overall smaller. And I believe another term used for the duodenum switch is stomach stapling. I believe that's not the other one that I'm going to talk about. There's a second one. This is the one that I think is is not stomach stapling, but I'm trying to remember what it's called. I don't remember what it's called. But there is a second type that rearranges the internal stomach area so that once again you have a smaller pouch in which to consume less food. Now, the third type, and this is the least most invasive, yes, I know, oxymoron there, and the least most dangerous, because the one that Boogie had, which I believe is the duodenum switch, can be very, very dangerous. And it is usually only recommended, fact is, most bariatric surgery in general is only recommended for people whose health has gotten to the point where it is literally a life and death situation. Okay? The one I'm going to talk about is the one I was looking at, and that is the lap band. And what they do here is at the very top of your stomach, where the pouch goes into the esophageal area, they will clamp a device around there. Okay? And that device can be adjusted. It is a gel that you fill and extract water from, and that will adjust the band around that area. Now, I had gone through the entire process for this except for the surgery, but before going into the surgery, I got to thinking, regardless of what I do, it comes down to having to eat a certain way, and if I have the lap band, I will basically still have to master this way of eating, and if I'm screwing up and fucking up on it, it's not going to get to the point where that does me any good, because I won't even be able to get it installed if I can't control that. And what my surgeon told me is that I would have to basically, for 3 weeks before the surgery, go down to a 400 calorie diet, liquid diet. Now, what I've done is I'm possibly looking at trying to severely curb my eating habits rather than having to go through the lap band, because that's basically what I'm going to have to do anyway. And if I can do that without the lap band unit inside of me, then more power to me, because you know, surgery, even as less invasive as this is, there's still potential for complications and shit. And seeing as I am not getting any younger, I would like to avoid that as much as I can. I've only been cut open once in my life, and that was in my youth when I could recover fairly well from it. Now, I've done really good for the past 2 weeks. On the weekend, I didn't watch my eating as much. But for the 2 weeks other than that weekend, I have been down below 1,000 calories. Sometimes even as low as between 400 and 500 calories. And I have not had any severe effects from this. Of course, it's not until after long term that you will have any effects from that. Now, I've also looked at modifying the lap band diet. Now, this has not been a liquid diet. This is just me trying to eat right. Part of it's been liquid. Now, I'm looking at the possibility of doing a diet because I know if I do 400 calories until I lose all that weight, it will have the possibility of presenting a mortal threat to me. Obviously, me being this big, period, presents a mortal threat. But overall, my health is very good. My markers are always good, etc. Now, one of the things that my physician who had prescribed lap band to me suggested was phentermine, which is not to be confused with the dangerous fen-phen. And what phentermine is basically orlistat. And what orlistat does is it blocks 30% of the fat consumed in a meal. And there's very specific recommendations on taking it. She started me a very low dosage, 15 milligrams. And I had done well with that, though I wasn't accompanying it with a strong diet, which I am now. And what I did was, recently I ran out my last prescription refill of that, and I switched to basically the only over-counter version of this, and that's the Alli. Okay? Now, a lot of you might be asking, why Alli? And that's a very good question. First, I want to show you what comes in the starter kit. You will get the Alli bottle of 60 capsules. You will get a README booklet, little manual thing, and you will get a more extensive companion guide, which I've read all of these materials, and they make some good points in it, and I'll get to that in a minute. And you will get this little capsule container, which contains 3 capsules, so that when you eat on the run, it's a very nice container, by the way, patent pending. When you eat on the run, you will have those with you and be able to take them with you and eat at your meal. Now, with Alli, first you need to understand why it works the way it does in order to answer the question of why Alli. Now, I've addressed repeatedly the calories in, calories out bullshit, and I'm going to tell you in a minute why that is bullshit. Understand this about Alli, though. Alli will block 30% of your fat, as I said, from each meal. Now, here's the thing, and I really believe people do not understand this. They look at a container of food, and Alli says that you must not go over 30% fat for your RDA, your recommended daily allotment. And people think, okay, so I'm good. I look at a container like this. Doritos, Lay's. These are actually decent chips. My sister had gotten these for me. Let's not get into the whole sabotaging thing. There's been a lot going on, so yeah. But my sister got these for me, knowing that I like this flavor of chips. And if you look here, let's see if it can zero in. Total fat, 7 grams. And that is 9, you see that? 9% of your RDA. So you think, okay, I can't have 3 servings of those. That will put me, unless I'm going to eat those for my meal, you know, and that would put me at my RDA for the day. Okay, the things you need to understand are this. Number 1, that RDA is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And I was initially having issues understanding this because I put myself down to 1,000 calories. So when I would use the Subway calculator to try to make a sandwich, it'd be like, oh yeah, this is, 30% of fat for this sandwich for your RDA. And I was like, okay, so I'm good. I was thinking, so I'm good for to have X amount of sandwich for my meal. But then when I go log it in a tracker, electronic tracker I'm using, and I don't remember the name of it. Just a second. Nutritionix. The Nutritionix tracker. When I went to log that in the tracker, it's like 60%. I'm like, what? Well, in the Subway, the default is 2,000 calorie RDA. Now, when I had Nutritionix customized, it was for that 1,000 calorie point. Okay. The recommended daily allotment is for a 2,000 calorie diet. If you're going to be relying on that, you have to figure out what the RDA of fat is for your diet, for your amount of calories. Okay? The second thing you need to understand is that Alli does not only say 30% of your fat for your recommended daily allowance is 30%. You can't go over 30% per meal as well. So you actually got 2 calculations you're running, and the Alli manual is not helpful on this at all, because they don't stress the daily or the 30% for that meal. They stress only the 30% for that day. Now, they do give an arbitrary number that seems to be changing. I've seen one deal say that you shouldn't go over 5 grams of fat per meal. Yes, I know. That's like, okay. And I've seen another deal that said it was 15 grams of fat per meal. And I think a lot of that confusion, again, is coming in the daily value versus the value for that meal. So you have to understand that, and you have to understand how to be able to figure out your how much of your meal is 30% fat. I'm going to tell you how to do that. It's a bit complicated, so bear with me. Okay, so you take these chips. It's 140 calories, and I'm going to get into the whole calorie thing in a minute. It's 7 grams of fat, and that's pretty much the only numbers you need to know. 140 calories, 7 grams of fat. So what you're going to do is you are going to, and you need to listen, this is very important that you understand this, because if you screw this up, you're going to be overshooting your fat intake. So what you need to do, many of you, if you're like me, will need a calculator for this. So, you know here that the 7 grams of fat is 9, according to this, 9% of your recommended daily allotment. Okay? So what you need to do is you need to take 140 and take that, and there's a very specific reason this is done this way. Okay? You need to take that 140 calories and you need to take that times 0.30. That's going to give you the 30% total for that 140 grams. Now listen very carefully because there's another step after this. The result is 42. So you think, oh, hey, I'm doing great. I can have 42 grams of fat. No. That means 42 of your calories are derived from fat in that meal. So how do I get my fat grams? This is where it pays to actually be obese to the point that you've looked up weight loss repeatedly on a bunch of shit, because you'll know this secondhand if you do. So, okay, let's go over the steps right quick so you know where we're at. 140 calories for that one serving. You take that, and you take that times 0.30 to find your 30%. That gives you a number of 42. You will then, and you're going to understand this in a few minutes when I go to explain it. Then you're going to divide that by 9. Okay? So you take that 42, you divide that by 9. And that leaves you with 4.6 grams of fat is all you should be able to have for that 140 calories. Well, you see, you have 7 grams of fat. Okay? So what you're going to do is you are going to take, and remember, yes, okay, a lot of people would be like, well, that's my meal, so to speak, and effectively you get the idea. If you're dealing with a meal, it's the same thing. You take all the calories for that meal, you take them times 0.30, and if anybody's curious, and I'm kind of asinine about this, you hear all these perfect scientific people in the movie saying 0.30 actually is properly pronounced, if you're being very scientific, if you're being truly scientific, that's 30 hundredths, but I'll address that in another video. So you see that for 140 calories, you can only have 4.6 grams of fat. The best way to handle this, but you got to be careful on how you do this again, is to eat half of that serving. Excuse me. And what you need to know about that is that you got to remember, if you eat half that serving, you have the calories, and you're still coming up with the same problem. But the point here is, if you get the fat grams low enough, then you can sit within a comfortable balance. And I'll get to some of that a little later, because the Alli 30% thing, it just depends on your body system overall. And I actually paid for it today, but I'll get into that later too. So now you know how to do that. You hear people say calories in, calories out. That's all the weight loss is about. And I have been all over this shit on forums, on messages, on videos. I want you to understand right now, a calorie is not a calorie. I want you to understand right now, there's no such thing as empty calories. An empty calorie does not exist. And a lot of people will point to sugar-laden snacks and be like, yeah, they do. Here's proof. No. You gotta understand. People don't understand this. Because of the nature of a calorie, it can literally not be nothing. Because there are 4 components, usually, from which a calorie is derived. Okay? Now, we're only primarily worried about 3 of these components, because the 4th component is not only offsets any of the other 3 mostly, but it's also usually found in such small amounts that it is not a major constituent to any given calorie. So you take any calorie, and it's going to be built up of a number of these 4 fundamental elements. And these 4 fundamental elements are, and because we're I'm going to use an analogy in a minute where we use only 3 of these elements. But these fundamental elements are fat, fiber, and carbohydrate. Or, I'm sorry. Fat, carbohydrate, protein, and fiber. And I didn't list any particular measure of importance. Okay? So, let's evaluate how these elements play into this. Okay? There's not a perfect calorie. It's impossible to have a perfect calorie. I'll give you a good example of this, because right now I'm doing something that I should not be doing, and it's a common sense thing. Sorry, desk is a landfill. And it's a common sense thing, and that is, it has no fat, but it's loaded with sugar, Mountain Dew Code Red. No, haven't got my diet maxed to the perfect point yet. I'm a little thirsty, so excuse me. But if you look at the nutrition label on this, you will see that it has 170 calories. Now, which of these number of building blocks is in that? Well, and if you misunderstood what I said before, you're like, well, your argument's invalid because soda doesn't have protein. Soda doesn't have fat. You're right. 0 fat, 0 protein. But what's it? Oh, carbohydrate, 46 grams. And that is where your calories are coming from. Oh, and I'm sorry, that was 170 calories per serving. And obviously you know the problem with that whole thing. That's not a serving, people. That is not a serving. I've been very bad about pop my whole life. I've been a pop addict. Well, not my whole life. It's been mostly bad recently, within the past years that I've been schooling. Okay, that's not serving. You really need to understand how to read your nutrition labels, because it will give you an amount for a serving, and then it will tell you how many servings are involved in that. Okay, so obviously you don't have any one calorie be composed of all 4 of these at once. Okay, this is what I mean when I say there's no such thing as a perfect calorie, because you would think naturally that perfect calorie would contain all 4 elements equally, and that's just not the case. This is where a lot of diets come in, because a lot of diets will focus on only a certain one of these elements of which calories are made up of. Here's the problem, and this is why Alli is made the way it is. Okay, and he explains it in this book. You have, and forget the fiber right now. Let's say you have 3 sources, and I'm going to go Transformers on you. Let's say we have 3 sources of energon. You have dark energon, you have energon, and you have, let's say, light energon, so to speak. No, there's no such thing, but since there's really technically only 2 sources of energon I'm aware of. So, dark energon tends to be more dense, if you will. So, we're going to say that dark energon is fat. We're going to say that energon, period, is going to be carbohydrates. Light energon is going to be protein. Now, this isn't in any order of preference. I know people who are familiar with energon in general will say, oh, dark energon's bad, so fat's bad. No, that's not the point I'm making here. Okay, but the point is each of these calories, or each of these elements, has a certain properties, and starting with the protein, we're going to find out why the fat has been assigned to the dark energon category. And it has to do with, I give you a little clue with saying that it's more dense. Okay, so protein has, for any calorie that, or any number of calories that you have, protein is going to make, you literally have 4 grams of protein will make 1 calorie. 4 grams of carbohydrate will make 1 calorie. But 1 gram of, or I'm sorry, I got that reversed. 1 gram of protein has 4 calories. 1 gram of, I knew I had that screwed up. 1 gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. But 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. So it is, you can already tell that it's about 2.5 times more dense than, say, protein or carbohydrates. Now, in addition to this, they have other elements that make them either better for or worse for you depending on how you're consuming your calories. Now, the benefit to protein is the building block of all muscles. It's the building block of life, literally, And it satiates better than any of the others, and it lasts longer, has an energy source. Now, the thing is, and there's arguments on this scientifically, but an extreme amount of protein is said to damage your kidneys. Okay. Now, obviously any extreme of anything is bad for you anyway. Okay. But protein is very important and will only become an issue if you get way too much of it, and it's in dispute how much is too much. Carbohydrate. This is good in that it provides a quick source of energy, boost energy, but the problem that's also is downfall in that the energy does not sustain for long. It spikes and then drops, and that will actually be the problem with your hunger, because it will satiate you for a temporary time and then you'll be hungry again. And this is why America is facing an obesity epidemic. This is my belief, because once the McGovern report came out in the 70s and everybody was like, oh my god, fat sucks, even though that was not McGovern's intent, because it had basically, what happened was the report had been revised because of the USDA, okay? And they had made it so that it was recommended to reduce fat, but increase, if I recall correctly, increase carbohydrates. Okay. Now the thing is the food manufacturers realized something very quickly, and it's like, if you take, and this has been said elsewhere, particularly in Fed Up by Gary Taubes, if you take the fat out of food, it tastes horrible. As Gary Taubes said, it tastes like cardboard. So what are you left with? You're left with needing to fill that with something that will make it more flavorful. Well, then they turn to sugar to do that. Now, in today's society, everything is sugar-laden. And that is part of the problem, because people will consume a vast amount of sugary foods and then nothing. You just eat and eat and eat. Despite what the bullshit propaganda is, and I'm not going to get into this extensively right here, but it's important to know. Okay, they talk about you reduce the amount of food you take in, you reduce your calories, and you go and exercise and exert energy, and then you have a calorie output. Okay, that does not work for practical reasons. Now, don't get me wrong, exercise helps weight loss, but anybody who says that exercise is designed for weight loss is fucking stupid. And I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, if you have that mentality, then skinny people don't need to worry about exercising. So why do they? I mean, it's pointless. You don't need to lose weight, right? You look great. Okay? What? You know? And people will be like, well, they they eat so they don't want to put on weight. Do they overeat? Do they overeat? Oh, uh, uh, let me tell you why they're doing it. They're doing it for body maintenance. One of the good things that has come out of the Let's Move campaigns and similar minded ideas on exercise is the relative idea of, and this is physics, of a body in motion stays in motion. Okay, great. You understand that much. Okay. But to claim that exercise is the end all and be all of weight loss, that's total horseshit. Now, another problem with excessive amounts of sugar is every time that goes through your body, it is spiking your pancreas to produce. Okay? This is one thing that people don't understand. And this was pointed out on Fed Up, and I don't want you to think I'm getting all my information from Fed Up, but some of this is important enough to bear repeating. And Bill Clinton said this in Fed Up. There was a time when there was no such thing, per speaking, as diabetes 2, type 2 diabetes. And the reason this is because it existed, but it was referred to as adult onset diabetes. And no longer is it called that. Is because you now have children and teenagers getting diabetes, type 2 diabetes, in their youth. Some very young. Now, I've known 9-year-old diabetics. Now, how does this happen all of a sudden out of nowhere? Particularly post-70s? Post-70s with the McGovern incident? And McGovern was not at fault at this? The USDA, of course, was at fault for this? How does this happen all of a sudden? So, and this is really important for you to understand, not just if you're a parent, not just if you're a health-conscious individual, but also, believe it or not, if you are a pet owner. We had a dog who just was diagnosed with diabetes. How does that happen to animals? They eat natural, right? Not only is it because of what's in the humans' food that a lot of humans give their dogs, and why you should not be giving your dogs human food. Of course, I'm only a partial, actually I'm a very small factor when it comes to the animals. I take them out, I walk them, make sure they're taken care of regularly. But I don't get a say in what they eat or do. And unfortunately, my dad is very generous with them when it comes to treats of all sorts. Now, he's curbed that because, one dog has diabetes. But how does that happen aside of human food? If you look at many dog foods today, particularly the dry ones, they are excessively high in carbohydrate high fillers. Okay? Now, when you get too many carbohydrates, too many sugars like that, it's going to tax your system. Okay? So there's that. Now, I want to go back to this idea of fat, even though I just strung out on carbohydrates, which is kind of a side rant that I did not intend to go that far. Hopefully informative. Okay, now, the one thing that the Alli book explains is that the reason that they target fat is because of it being twice, any gram of fat being twice the caloric constitution of the other elements. So it makes sense to target something And if you remove half the fat from your system, then basically you have balanced out, hopefully, your caloric intake from fat with your caloric intake from the other sources. Now, in any source, it's important to know that fiber, particularly with carbohydrates, fiber will buffer. Fiber buffers. Fiber is excellent, number one, for preventing hunger and keeping you satiated for longer, and number two, for buffering certain internal chemical effects that come from, for example, the spiking of the pancreas from excessive amounts of carbohydrate or sugars. So these are reasons that I am looking at Alli. The other reason comes from personal experience, because I had only taken the phentermine because my doctor suggested it. But I noticed even when I was not doing what I needed to do and was not losing weight per se, that it seemed like my body was changing. And that really impressed me. And now that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing for the most part with it, I mean, my little sin. Okay. But for the most part, since I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing with it, and yes, I know I would lose a lot more if I didn't include this horrible addiction of mine, I have noticed extreme changes to my body in the extent of, so recently I have not been able to hit my physical therapy since middle of December, and I've had to go through and redo my deal on it. But without exercise for 2 weeks, yeah, I had been having problems getting behind the wheel of the car and my stomach rubbing against it. Now there is clearance. I should tell you, that's impressive. Okay, so I am trying very hard. But you gotta understand, weight loss is you're hopefully implementing small steps that become lifelong habits. Okay, so it's not going to be perfect all the time. But the more you do towards your health, the more you do to take care of yourself, the better off you will be in the long run. So that's pretty much it on not only addressing why I'm taking Alli, but giving you information on how Alli works and what you can expect. There is one thing you should know, and most people know this if they go to take Alli, is a potentially nasty side effect. And literally you can basically piss shit, so to speak. I mean, you will get the runs if you eat too much fat in your diet, because it eliminates it. It's got to have some way to eliminate it. That is through your waste. That is through your stool. And I kind of paid for that today because I had balanced things out good. So like yesterday, the only thing I had to eat, day before, the only thing I had to eat day before was a 6-inch steak sub that I had modified so that it fit relatively within the confines of that 30%. Now, Nutritionix says it's 60% fat for that amount of calories. But my body, as long as I don't go over too much, is comfortable with that. And this is what I mean when I say 30%, you got to kind of give and take on how your body reacts with Alli to fat in general. And you will begin to learn that. They recommend 2 days of being able to stay at home before you even start it, so that in case you have issues, you are close to a bathroom and you're not getting embarrassed in public. But you can make it work, and I am making it work. Today was I got a little stupid. I had 6-inch steak. I had a friend give me a gift card for Christmas Subway. Love it. $40. And I've gotten 2 sandwiches already. Which, the first sandwich became 2 meals. So, I got a Subway today, and I ate a 6-inch for lunch. But I was really craving Subway. And about an hour, and I took my one Alli in the morning. I have not been, because it was at such a much higher dose than what my other had been, is literally 4 times higher than what my other did, though I did work my way up to 2 of those capsules, the 15 milligrams, 2 of those, so it's basically double what my other had been. Because the dose was so high, I decided to do one a morning for the first week, which is, or first couple weeks, basically. I mean, no, that's right, because I just started the Alli this week because I had the Phentermine from the other. So I decided the first week to go 1 capsule in the morning just to see how my body handled it. Because I was really craving Subway, about an hour and a half later, I ate the other 6-inch, and then about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, I had a latte. Yeah. Now, it wasn't horrible. It was not by any stretch of the imagination horrible. I mean, it was bad for about 15 to 30 minutes, stomach cramping, really hitting the bathroom for about 3 rounds. But overall, I mean, I'm doing good and everything with it. And like that one day, I had the 6-inch sub, and that was all for that day. Even though the sub's reading is over the 30%, my body was handling it excellently. 30% for that meal, my body was handling it excellently. So that now is everything you need to know about Alli. That is what you need to know about where I've been in my weight loss journey, and hopefully you've gotten additional information you might not have known otherwise about the process of weight loss, calories, etc. And that is it for this video. Those of you that have kept with me, thank you. Particularly those of you who have kept with me for my weight loss videos, and I haven't done a lot of those in a while. Thank you. To those of you just joining me, if you like, subscribe, throw a thumbs up. And to all of you, this is Big Bastard signing out. Catch you on the flip side.